Hello folks, Jorge D'Amico here. We are getting closer to the end of the wood palette series in 1/35 scale. This and the next week's video are all about painting and detailing to make the palettes that we've been creating look realistic and aesthetically pleasing. Wood palettes in real life come not only in natural pine wood tone color as well as in a variety of different accent colors added by companies and manufacturers. In addition to that, they can get pretty beat up and dirty, which gives us modelers plenty of options for us to play with. On today's episode, I will show you my process of painting the ones made out of balsa wood. We will cover the preparation for the pieces, creating the base pine wood tone, adding color, tonal variation for additional contrast, applying dirt effects, creating wear and tear, nail marks, and blending everything together to wrap things up. As usual, the step-by-step guide is available for download on my website for free. The link is on the description below. At the end of the video, I will demonstrate 3 bonus techniques that will take your palettes to the next level, making them stand out even more on your next diorama or vignette. So stick with me. The first step we take is to prepare the balsa wood surface to receive paint. Balsa wood is a great material to imitate wood, but it is very porous, which means it will soak up any liquid you apply to it. So the first thing we need to do is to seal the entire surface with a solution of mixed white glue and water. In the next step, we create the foundation by applying the pine wood color. To do that, we mix 15 drops of airbrush thinner and 1 drop of golden brown from Vallejo. In real life, some palettes never receive coats of painting. They stay in their natural pine wood color, and this is what we are reproducing in this phase. Make sure you give a nice coat to the entire surface, covering all gaps, corners, and crevices. You can add more coats if you want them to look darker. As you can see, I have added some variation on my sample simply by adding an extra coat of the paint mix. Step 3. This is the time you can decide to add the color you want. I recommend you to do a quick online search so you can find the color that best fits your needs. During my own research, I was able to find blue, red, even yellow and green palettes. So pick up the color you want and go for it. Here I decided to spice things up based on this image I've seen online. Not only I wanted to do blue, but I also wanted to reproduce this wear condition as seen on the image. I used Vallejo Deck 10 to simulate the worn out areas, masked them out with Tamiya masking tape, and for the base color, I used Vallejo Dark Blue. After the palette is covered in blue and the mask is removed to reveal the base grayish tone, I then proceeded with the blending the 2 colors together using a small piece of sponge. The goal is to add a little bit more of the blue color to soften the edges we created with the masking, making the transition of the 2 colors smoother. Be careful to remove as much paint as you can from the sponge using a paper towel. Step 4. While I let the blue palette to dry, I took another palette which I also painted in blue but not entirely. I didn't paint the upper baseboards on this one because I wanted to expose the pine wood tone, which gave me a perfect foundation to work on tonal variations. Using a very diluted sepia oil color from Abteilung with odorless terpenoid, you can apply the mixture on the entire surface or as I did on a couple planks only. This makes the piece more interesting, adding a controlled tonal variation to the pine wood color, also to the parts already painted in blue as well. Okay. Going back to our original blue palette, I gave it a more generous coat of the sepia mix, which will help to blend the previous steps even more. Step 5. In this step, we'll add dirt effect to the palette. I decided to add a heavy coat of dirt to our worn out palette, and to do that I chose a different approach using pigments. I created a mixture of AK Dark Earth and European Earth. This will give us a dusty look as well as will help to blend the layers even more, giving it a more real dirty look. To help fix the pigment, I applied AK Pigment Fixer with a simple plastic spray bottle, letting it dry before moving forward to the next step. Step 6. Unless you want to create a palette that looks brand new and never used, you have to add some tear to it. For this task, I used a hobby knife, being very gentle to chip areas that normally would worn out faster on the palettes. Use your reference to do it on the right places and not to overdo it. Step 7. Get a used airbrush needle to retrace the nail marks we created during the construction phase of the palette. This will help to re-emphasize those marks. They might have get obscured with the coats of paint we gave to the piece so far. Step 8. This final step will harmonize all the tones and colors we've given so far. And for that task, we will apply Vallejo Deck 10 using the dry brush technique. I normally get a flat old brush for the job. Make sure you remove as much paint as you can with a paper towel. Less is more here, remember. This will give you more control over the technique. The goal is to do it very gently at the corners and edges of the piece. Remember, in the beginning of the video I mentioned that I would share a few techniques that would take your palettes to the next level, making them stand out even more on your next diorama or vignette? So here they are. The first one is to add stain effects. I want to replicate oil spill collected under a 55-gallon oil drum that marked the surface of the palette. I used a 135 scale resin oil drum that I had on my stash, painting the top edge with a Vallejo German camouflage black-brown, removed the excess with a paper towel, and used the remaining paint to stamp on the surface of the palette. It's a very easy trick that adds a lot of character to the palette. Rust effect. This technique simulates rust collected on the palette as if a big metal crate or a piece of machinery had been on the palette for a long time, rusting it away. To do that, I masked out the surface in the shape I wanted, using Vallejo Game Effects Dry Rust with the sponge technique. Remember to use small amounts of paint so you can have better control of how much paint gets applied to the maxed out area. Grime effect. This last technique is the application of the grime effect. For this job, we will use industrial earth oil paint from 502 Abteilung, diluted with odorless terpenoid. The ratio varies depending on the look you are trying to achieve, as well as the fact that the balsa wood will still absorb a lot of the mix. So if you're looking for a more controlled wash, like a large stain, apply a diluted mix with a small brush. If the look you're after is more like small stains, use a tip of a fine brush, dabbing into the portions of the paint that didn't get much diluted yet, and then you apply to the palette. I suggest you to try this technique in other balsa wood pieces or underneath of the palette if it will not be visible on your model, so you can get the hang of it. And there you have it, the final result. Wood palette for your next 135 project, now with color and paints and wear and tear and everything else. Stay tuned because on the next episode I will show you my step-by-step to paint the wood palette we created in polystyrene. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, and that these tutorials can inspire and help you to create your own wood palette for your new builds. Let me know your comments and if you have any questions. You can find the link to download the PDF file for free describing all the steps as you saw me following on this episode in the description below. And if you like this video and you'd like to see me creating more content like this one, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Oh, and don't forget to click on the bell icon as well so you can keep up to date every time I post something new. Thanks for watching. We see each other on our next video. Ciao.